Facebook stalker. I grew up extremely privileged. Gated neighborhood, private school, cleaning ladies. The area I lived in had a generally poor people sort of vibe to it, which is why when I smiled at the valet, something must have clicked. I was about 15 years old when my parents, and my older brother were all invited to dinner at a golf club about 30 minutes from where we lived. There was a valet service at the club, which was not out of the ordinary, and since it was raining and my mother couldn't imagine walking more than a few seconds in the rain, we pulled up to the front to have a valet go and park our car. I remember being in a really good mood that day. So when the valet took the keys from my father and thanked us for coming to the club, I smiled at him and thanked him back. Dinner was nothing special, and neither was the week or so following dinner. We got our keys and our car back just fine, and we went about business as usual. One Saturday night, my best friend was throwing a birthday party. It would be my first real party, as boys would be there and her parents would be out of the house. I was, obviously, very excited, and by the end of the night, everyone was tipsy and paired off with someone of the opposite gender, including me. The next morning, I was planning on staying at my friend's place until my headache receded, but my mom called me home much earlier than expected. She had received a Facebook message from what was obviously a throwaway account. The message said that I had attended a house party with alcohol and lewd behavior, and the messenger wanted my mother to know so she could keep me safe. The message would have been strange to begin with, but the fact that my full name first, middle, and last had been included was even creepier. Regardless of concern over the message, my mom grounded me and volunteered me to babysit for the neighbors. So instead of spending my Friday night hanging out with my friends, I was over at the neighbor's house watching their children. Overall, the time I spent with the kids was not terrible. They were good kids and went to bed early, so I had the house to myself until midnight when my dad would pick me up. I had been trained not to answer doors when I was home alone from a very young age, so when I heard the knock at around 9:30 that night, I didn't answer it. In fact, I moved a little farther away from the door and turned the volume on the TV down so that whoever it was didn't know I was there. I can't remember what justification I gave for someone knocking that late, but whatever it was, it calmed me down when the person left, and then came the knocking on the glass door in the back of the house. I bolted up, grabbed the house's cell phone, and booked it up the stairs. I woke the older girl, ushered her into her younger brother's room, locked the bedroom door, shoved a dresser in front of it, and called my mom. She called the family, who came home immediately. No damage had been done to the house, but there were footsteps outside. The police couldn't do anything, so I shook it off but vowed I would never babysit again. Nothing strange happened for a few months, and at this point I was well into my freshman year. You could say I fell into the wrong crowd, but my mother had no knowledge of this. And then came the second message. It was from a different account, but the person's name was the same. It contained roughly the same content, saying I was drinking and getting involved with boys, but it also wrongly accused me of being into some hard drugs. I vehemently denied these allegations to my mother, and she believed me. This time, she called the police and told them that someone seemed to be watching her underage daughter. I was grounded again. Just a few days after the second Facebook incident occurred, my family went out to dinner. We locked the house up as usual and went out. When we arrived back home, the front door was open, moving slightly in the wind. We were absolutely terrified and called police before going inside. They searched the house thoroughly and told us that the good news was that no one was inside. The bad news, my room was absolutely ransacked. I started crying. To this day, I can't truly tell you why. The eerie messages combined with the babysitting incident pile on top of a home invasion just left me a wreck. We went through my room trying to figure out what had gone missing. The list included my school ID, a picture of my boyfriend at the time, my laptop, and a bottle of alcohol I had kept hidden under my bed. Creepiest of all, though, was that a bra I had bought just a week earlier was also gone. My mom didn't know about it, because it was something I had bought to impress my boyfriend, but I had to tell both her and the police. And honestly, any possibility of embarrassment was absolutely gone. I was sufficiently terrified, and so was my mom. When the responding officers were updated on the overall situation, my family was driven to a friend's house in unmarked police cars, as these incidents seemed to likely be connected, and this person was clearly following me everywhere I went. We were told to call the police any time something suspicious happened, and the officers made a promise that someone would always respond, no matter how minimal it might seem. Things were okay for a little while. I was still paranoid, never going anywhere alone and refusing to stay at home without someone else with me. And then everything started up again. My boyfriend called me, saying that someone had followed him around and he was shopping with his mom. I asked him for a description of the man and gave it to the police. That was a step in the right direction, I thought. At least we might be able to visually identify him. Thing was, he seemed to be stalking my boyfriend now. Our families were friends, so we did dinner together, and then all the kids, me, my brother, my boyfriend, and his younger sister decided we would go outside for a walk. It was steadily getting dark out, and we were about 5 minutes away from the house when it became completely dark outside. Everyone was fairly tired and pretty quiet as we walked toward the house. My brother stopped dead in his tracks right in front of the driveway and shushed everyone. We listened. There was rustling in the bushes. It was loud enough that it was clear it could only come from a person or a very large animal. And since there were no very large animals in the area, it had to be a person. Slowly we all turned around and walked quietly back across the street, finally getting far enough away to call the police. We also called our parents, telling them it sounded like someone was outside and to lock all the doors and not leave the house. We were safe in our current location. We were sat next to a street light, so we could see everything around us, and the house was close to a block away. A lot happened once the police came, so I'm going to do my best to summarize. As soon as the cops flashed their lights toward the house, someone came running out of the hedges. The officers managed to be fast enough to tackle him, wrestling a knife out of his hand. There was a lot of panicking and a lot of crying, most of it on my part. But they got the guy into custody, and everyone went home, though I don't think anyone slept. A few days later, the police got back to us regarding charges and the overall situation. The man worked as a valet at the golf club we had gone to. In addition to the knife, he had a copy of our house key. He had apparently made himself after taking pictures of it from off Dad's key ring. When questioned, the man told the police that he was in love with me. Somehow, he managed to follow us home from the golf club that first night and watched our family. He decided that my parents weren't taking good enough care of me, which is why he sent the messages to my mom. He didn't like the fact that I was left alone in a house I didn't know, which is why he scared me while I was babysitting. He wanted me to go home. The more he followed me, the more he thought I needed to be saved. He hated the fact that I had a boyfriend, and when he broke in, he took everything he thought I could use to do something supposedly bad. The end game was to kill both my boyfriend and my parents. I think he's in a mental hospital now, but I honestly don't know. The whole ordeal has left me with years of paranoia and fear, and we ended up moving across state lines a few months later. We haven't used valet services since. Story 2. Losing a friend on Facebook just brought me to the point of near hysteria. I was just checking up on my Facebook, as I do every night before bed as I browse Reddit and turn off the lights on my fish tank, when I realized I dropped from 273 to 272 friends. Not that unusual, I guess. I don't keep in contact with the overwhelming majority of them. Heck, some are back from high school, most from college. But I'm a bit insecure, I guess. Maybe I took it personally. The person could have just deactivated after some drama or something. But it didn't take long to figure out who it was. It was Lauren, a former coworker of mine. She committed suicide a little over a month ago. I guess her family finally was able to take down her page. I work at a long-term care facility as a pharmacist, and I'm somewhat new to the job compared to a lot of the employees. It's something of a community there, and some of the nurses and doctors have been there for decades. Lauren started a few weeks after me as a nursing student at the local state university. As disrespectful as it sounds in hindsight, she was typical to me at first, the kind of girl who, in all reality, wasn't a standout. She was pretty quiet and hard-working. If I asked her to file some paperwork, make a doctor call, or prepare something for me, she'd do it with a simple "yes, sir," despite me asking her to call me by my first name to make things more casual and a little less uptight. And while quiet and not exactly a prodigy, when it came to the hustle and bustle of a budget-constrained nursing home, she obviously had a passion. I pinned her as someone who probably had someone really close to her die painfully when she was young, and it motivated her to pursue this line of work. After all, most students get part-time work at the affiliated hospital, not unpaid internships at an old facility like this. Anyway, it does feel great to get this out. It's like a huge stress relief. I scoffed at grief counseling at the time, but maybe it would have been worth it. I work with patients who are dying and know it. Every day, in the few months I've worked here, I've seen a few friends pass on, but not all deaths are the same, and some hit you differently. Hers hit hard. I remember a few weeks before a coworker told me about her suicide. We found out that she had dropped out of her school's nursing program and probably out of the university in general. That was as surprising as her departure from us. Looking back, sure, she acted a bit strange those last few days, but we put it and the later news down to her having family problems that she needed to attend to. Every day it was the same routine. but in a good way. I'd look over the medication request forms, check the logs from the nursing to make sure all the medication was being administered and that surveys were taken to assure patient satisfaction. A lot of these patients are on narcotics for pain, and sometimes that isn't even enough. We often have to give many additional medication for breakthrough pain. That's unfortunately so typical of conditions like cancer. Lauren was my right-hand girl. She'd alphabetize the random stack of faxes and call all the doctors to confirm any changes. She'd make rounds with me as we checked up on all the patients. Could they swallow capsules, chew tablets, were their scheduled activities, helping them cope, etc. Lauren, typically quiet, pretty much became the center of attention in these events. She'd be grabbing pillows and blankets even without asking. She somehow knew what they needed, but that was just the problem. Before speaking, she'd get them things from the storage rooms. She'd miss out on a lot of the patient interaction or one of the physicians would do. Every once in a while, I'd hear her practicing the props she must have overheard us asking in one of the back rooms. Since patients do often come and go, there's typically at least one or two spare rooms in the back corridor. I'd always catch her asking, "Are you having any trouble taking your medication? How's your neck? Too stiff? We can get you a pillow. Here, take your arthritic medication and some antibiotics to keep you healthy. Don't forget your daily Colcrease and pain medication." Towards her last days before she quit, there were some unusual problems with any larger healthcare facility. You have a lot of healthcare professions, Unfortunately, something like 20% of them will engage in some form of drug diversion during their career. They'll take some painkillers for themselves or to sell. We normally didn't have problems with this because the staff were fairly selective and a pretty big family. But when things started going wrong, all the eyes instantly fell on Lauren and I. Unfortunately, these things weren't taken from the pharmacy shelves. No, we have over 7 cameras in a space the size of your living room. They were taken from the shipment boxes, something that only someone in the pharmacy would have access or knowledge of. If you wanted to avoid detection, reports would say we got a certain amount. Inventory would say we got less. The distributor double-checked and proved the boxes had been tampered with after drop-off. I was a new pharmacist, a few months in one of those chain retail pharmacies before I applied here. They started talking about me behind my back. Why did I leave retail? Anyone who has worked in a retail pharmacy can tell you that. 1. Did I get caught there? 2. Things were just as bad, if not worse, on Lauren. A student in this facility is rare, and let's just say people weren't so trusting of her to begin with. We thought with all the pressure and the gossip, she just had too much and quit. A few weeks later, we found out that she dropped out of school, and a few weeks later, well, she committed suicide. We all felt kind of guilty that it was our fault. Me, especially, I was her go-to guy. I should have stood up for her more, but I was too worried about inquiries into me and keeping my own job. It wasn't until a few days ago that we found out the real reason she quit. Her funeral was quick and private. Only a few days ago as well, there I spoke with her parents. They knew so much about me which hurt like a dagger through the heart. She talked so much about the job, and me. I let her down. I should have spotted the signs, but her father pulled me aside afterwards. He told me not to worry about it, as I was apparently communicating my guilty heavily. He told me that one of the patients at the facility was too much for her, that she couldn't keep going back and didn't know if this line of work was for her. I was shocked. She loved those patients. Was that the problem? Did she get too attached to one? My mind raced to think of patients who passed while she was there, but I couldn't think of any. She'd only been there for a few months. I asked for a name, if the father could, to satiate my curiosity. He said it was some Robinson lady, that this patient would berate her and force her to do things she didn't want to. I was stunned. I didn't recall a Mrs. Robinson, but then again I wasn't the only person Lauren worked with, and I wasn't the only pharmacist. I specialized in pain management. There were sectors for people with more basic disabilities and those with dementia. Needless to say, I went back to the facility the following Monday and asked around. Not many people remembered anything about a Mrs. Robinson. No one wanted to talk about it either. Maybe it was an obvious hint, but back then I was just thinking that these people really hated Mondays. I dug through some files, but nothing. I searched the central database, nothing. I started going through old scripts. Surely something from before my time must match. Robinson isn't exactly a rare name. I've got to get at least a false trigger. But all I could find were scripts with the name blocked off, like those government documents you see where parts have black bars for redacted information. Someone had done this with the medication orders that were scanned, and I searched for the originals, thinking it might only be tape. But I couldn't find anything. I looked at the dates and the medications and realized it was for the same patient, probably a progressive disease and increasing treatment. I struggled to identify it by the medication alone, but a few things tipped it. Mrs. Robinson, if these were her prescriptions, had Lyme disease and treated Lyme disease normally. It's fine. Go to a doctor and you're off free. Don't get it treated. And, well, paralysis at first. I asked my supervisor of the day shift about this. He told me he didn't know what I was talking about, that the scripts had been blotted out because of HIPAA and patient privacy. We both knew that's not how that's done. I dug around some more, and the best I could do was confirm that the blocked-out scripts did indeed belong to a Michelle Robinson. She had entered the facility fairly young due to a disability. Realizing it was for Lyme disease, I wondered how she let it get that far, that bad. Then again, I remember being in class and learning about it. The signs, tiredness, something our class would joke about for a few days after that lecture. We all must have Lyme disease. Well, now it wasn't so funny. Knowing her name, I looked through records. It's a healthcare facility. These things are regulated heavily, and everything is recorded. I found a few things, and that she had passed away recently. The only problem is, and the full-body goosebumps began, was that she passed away before I started working there, which means she passed before Lauren even started. I obviously was a bit scared, a bit jumpy, rationalizing it. I thought maybe just the story of this patient made her quit. Maybe it was a moving recollection from one of the nurses. But I quickly remembered how viciously her father made this Robinson lady sound, and how none of the nurses wanted to talk about it. Something was off. I confronted Rebecca, the head nurse on my shift, about it. Something along the lines of, I know you have some sort of oath of secrecy here regarding Michelle Robinson, but how the hell did Lauren know about her? Her face went from stop bothering me to absolute pallor in a split second. From the lady bellowing orders to the staff, full of life, to a woman who looked like she was nothing more than a hollow flesh vessel. She told me that Mrs. Robinson had been admitted because she didn't have the family or the money for anywhere else, that feeling abandoned and betrayed. She wasn't exactly the nicest of patients. Her doctors, her family, they never realized she was suffering from Lyme disease. They told her she must be lazy or out of shape. Apparently her family had some nurses in it, so she held a bit of a grudge there, too. I asked how Lauren could have known her, but she didn't have an answer. She just said it was impossible. Impossible with a stutter at the voice of the intercom, one of power and authority. Never had. This woman was spooked, and sure as hell I was too. I began going over the files, becoming nearly obsessed with this. I'd sometimes be late for or entirely forget rounds with patients. I'm not proud to say I forgot those who need me most, but this was consuming me. I eventually found a pattern in one of those cliché eureka moments. The medication that had gone missing were some antibiotics and Colcrease. This is not your typical theft. Thieves go for the hydrocodones, the fentanyl patches, etc. These medications are commonly used to treat late-stage Lyme disease among many, many other things. With my recent obsession with the disease and this patient, that was the only indication that stuck out. Everyone only paid attention to the high-profile narcotics. No one really thought much of the other missing items. Now I was horribly freaked. These medications were being administered to Mrs. Robinson up until 2 weeks before she died. Why did they stop? And what exactly did happen? Apparently word got around about me asking too many questions, and I was called into the administration's office, an annoying procedure for employees that are in violation of patient privacy. I explained my situation and threatened to go public with it. I told them I understood things here are like a family, but one that I considered part of my family committed suicide over something related to Mrs. Robinson. He opened one of those steel cabinets with all the manila folders. He had, somewhat comically, hid her information in a folder labeled Julia Roberts. 2 weeks before Michelle Sandy Robinson had died, the same time her medication stopped, she was reported to have attacked one of the nurses. Apparently it was so bad, or as bad as a disabled woman could do, that the employee was fired when she retaliated. Being a close bunch, you knew that the firing wasn't by choice. There was probably an investigation and a complaint. As I said earlier, Mrs. Robinson didn't have much family or money. She was probably being propped up on the horrible reimbursements the state gave us for these kinds of patients. She wasn't well liked from the start, and her attitude, then this incident, made things unbearable. She was listed as entering a comatose-like state 2 weeks before her death, where she wasn't administered anything. The way it was presented, the administrator made sure I knew it wasn't true. She had been punished for what she had done and left to die. She eventually succumbed to heart failure, probably from being taken off her anti-inflammatories, and left to die after an inexplicably painful 2 weeks. That answered a lot, but not everything. How did Lauren know about this? How did she know how mean this woman apparently was? Was she a ghost? Then it struck me, right as the admin was threatening me never to tell what he had hinted earlier. Those times when I thought Lauren was practicing a patient script, those medications impossible, I muttered out loud. confused as to why I was saying impossible to a list of never tell anyone what we did threats. I told him that I agreed to his terms and that I had one question left. What room was she held in? I sat silently for the split second before he answered, screaming in my head 1,000,000,000 times, "Don't say to 106. Don't say to 106. Don't say to 106. But as soon as he moved his mouth to answer, my heart sank. "To 106, he answered. "It's why we don't have anyone in there yet. We still have to finish up some paperwork with the state and clean everything up." I left his office as if I was on my way to the guillotine. I felt like a dead man walking. I stopped by the room, tapped on the lights, and didn't see much. I saw some wrappers of some syringes, the usual paper trash, and all. Nothing unusual. I left and stayed out in the central area all day. I was way too terrified to head back to my office alone. I still have no idea, to this day, what went on in that room, how or why Lauren saw Mrs. Robinson, why she hurt Lauren, someone who had nothing to do with the pain she endured, and what she said to drive her over the edge and spiraling to a horrible end. That room has yet to be filled, and I still pass it as I make rounds. I need a paycheck. I can't just up and quit. No nearby hospitals are hiring, and I'd rather take my chances with a vindictive ghost than in retail again. Am sitting here, alone in my bed, typing this. It's way later than I wanted to stay up until. It's the 4th of July tomorrow. Well, technically today it's past midnight here, and I still have work to get up for in a few hours. Just remembering the things I never want to remember. Seeing the picture of the patient on the information files. Seeing Lauren's face as it slowly got less and less cheerful and enthusiastic, and more sullen. I realized why she acted the way she did, and why she avoided patient interaction when she could. I realized where she was running off to when I was busy getting more medication for this woman she saw. What bothers me the most are those syringe wrappers in the trash. The reports showed no drug overdose in Lauren's body. She took herself in a more gruesome way. Those wrappers, I recently learned, were from a different manufacturer. We changed when our wholesaler got a better price elsewhere. We changed recently. Those weren't left there from months ago. They were used within the past few weeks. None of the nurses have entered that room half out of guilt and half of fear. Perhaps someone dumped their trash in there as they were passing by. But the combination of drugs in those syringes, that trademark yellow, viscous fluid, and the thinner red in the other, was a special combination that only one patient was on. Someone used them recently. It's a fact that I've successfully ignored for the past few days, as in grappling with the death of someone I had grown close to. And with this investigation that consumed me over the past few days, tomorrow it should be a slower day, less work to do with the holiday and all. I'm going to ask to see where Mrs. Robinson was taken. What morgue, what cemetery, if already in one. I have to know she's there, in one. 6 feet under or locked in a metal locker in the basement of some morgue. I need that peace of mind or I'll never be able to have a night's sleep again. Story 3. My dead girlfriend keeps messaging me on Facebook. I've got the screenshots. I don't know what to do. Tonight's kind of a catalyst for this post. I just received another message, and it's worse than any of the others. My girlfriend died on the 7th of August, 2012. She was involved in a 3-car collision driving home from work when someone ran a red light. She passed away within minutes on the scene. We had been dating for 5 years at that point. She wasn't big on the idea of marriage. It felt archaic, she said, gave her a weird vibe. But if she had been, I would have married her within 3 months of our relationship. She was vibrant, the kind of girl that would choose dare every time. She was happiest when camping, but a total technophile too. She always smelled like cinnamon. That being said, she wasn't perfect. She always said something along the lines of, "If I cark it first, don't just say good things about me. I've never liked that. If you don't pay me out, you're doing me a disservice. I've got so many flaws, and that's just part of me." So this is for Am. The music she said she liked and the music she actually liked were very different. Her idea of affection was a side hug. She had really long toes, like a chimpanzee. I know that's tangential, but I don't feel right discussing her without you having an idea of what she was like. On to the meat. Em had been dead for approaching 13 months when she first messaged me. September 4th, 2013. This is when it began. I had left Emily's Facebook account activated, so I could send her the occasional message, post on her wall, go through her albums. It felt to final and to an Emily to memorialize it. I share access with her mother, Susan, meaning her mother has her login and password and has spent a total of approximately 3 minutes on the website or on a computer total. After a little confusion, I assumed it was her. November 16th, 2013. I had received confirmation from Susan that she hadn't logged into EMS Facebook since the week of her death. Em knew a lot of people, so I instantly assumed this was one of her more tech-savvy friends fucking with me in the worst possible way. I noticed pretty much immediately that whoever was chatting with me was recycling old messages from Em and Miss shared chat history. The wheels on the bus comment was from when we were discussing songs to play on a road trip that never eventuated. Hello happened a million times. Around February 2014, Emily started tagging herself in my photos. I would get notifications for them, but the tag would generally always be removed by the time I got to it. The first time I actually caught one, it felt like someone had punched me in the gut. She would tag herself in spaces where it was plausible for her to be, or where she would usually hang out. I've got screenshots of 2 from April and June. These are the only ones I've caught, so they're a little out of the timeline and trying to write out imgur.com/x9g5xj.tng :/i.imgur.com/55fwxkt.png. Around this period of time, I stopped being able to sleep. I was too angry to sleep. She would tag herself in random photos every couple of weeks. The friends who noticed and said something thought it was a fucked up bug. I found out recently that there have been friends who have noticed and say anything. Some of them have removed me from their Facebook friends list. At this point, some of you may be wondering why I didn't just kill my Facebook profile. I wish I had. I did for a little while. On days when I can't get out there, though, it's nice having my friends available to chat. It's nice visiting EMS page when the little green circle is next to her name. I was already socially reclusive when Em was alive. Her death turned me into something pretty close to a hermit, and Facebook and MMOs were my only real social outlets. On March 15th, I sent what I assumed was M's hacker a message. On March 25th, I received an answer. It wasn't until I was going over these logs a few months later that I noticed she was recycling my own words as well. My response seems kind of lackluster here. I was intentionally providing her with emotional bait. This is actually devastating to keep them interested in their game. I was working off the assumption that the kind of person to do this would be the kind of person that would thrive on the distress of others. I was posting in tech forums, looking for ways to track this person, contacting Facebook. I needed to keep them around so I could gather evidence. Before anyone asks, yes, I had changed the password and all security info countless times. 16th of April, I received this. This seems like word salad. Like all our conversations so far, it's recycled from previous messages she's sent. 29th of April, I hadn't discovered any leads. Facebook had told me the locations her page had been accessed from, but since her death, they're all places I can account for: my home, my work, her mom's house, etc. My response here wasn't bait. Yo asked Nathan wasn't in joke to lame worth explaining, but seeing her say it again just absolutely fucking crippled me. My reaction in real life was much less prettier. In not expecting my bond back, her last few messages had started to scare me, but I wouldn't admit it at this point. 8th of May, I don't really have the words for this, for SNG is the first original word she's made. This has given me nightmares that have only started to kick in recently. I keep dreaming that she's in an ice-cold car, frozen blue and gray, and am standing outside in the warmth screaming at her to open the door. She doesn't even realize I'm there. Sometimes her legs are outside with me. 24th of May. I wasn't actually drunk. She wasn't an affectionate girl, and it always embarrassed her to exchange I love yous, cuddle, talk about how much we meant to each other. She was more comfortable with it when I was boozed up. I got fake drunk a lot. Her reply is what prompted me to finally memorialize her page, thinking it might help curb this behavior. It might seem innocuous compared to her previous message. It's pasted from an old conversation where I was trying to convince her to let me drive her home from a friend's. In the collision, the dashboard had crushed her. She was severed in a diagonal line from her right hip to midway down her left thigh. One of her legs was found tucked under the back seat. Going back in time, 7th of August, 2012. These are logs from the day she died. She was usually home from work by 4:30. This, alongside a couple of voicemail messages, is the last time I talked to her under the assumption that she was alive. You'll see why I'm showing you these soon. Yesterday, 1st of July, 2014. I memorialized her page a couple of days after I received the message about walking. Until today, she had been quiet. She wasn't even tagging herself in my photos. I don't know what to do anymore. Do I kill her memorial page? What if it is her? I want to puke. I don't know what's happening. I just heard a Facebook alert. I'm too afraid to swap windows and check it. Story 4. I read my sister's Facebook page. When my sister died, I came into possession of her Facebook account. That looks a bit weird now that I've typed that out. To be honest, I'm probably not the first person who should have access to her account. Logically, that honor should go to her husband, dead, if it goes to anyone at all. The thing is, Nobody knows that I have access to the account. She gave me her password, Jesus, 6 years ago. She had asked me to log in and check something for her on my computer. I can't remember why now. It's one of those little memories that seemed unimportant at the time, but I miss dreadfully now. A million little interactions and words and smiles between us, and I'll never remember most of them. I digress. Anyway, the password, about a week after she died, I tried the password on a whim. I figured she must have changed it at some point within the last 6 years, but to my surprise, I was granted access right away. Honestly, Annalise, she never was very good with cybersecurity. I know I shouldn't have gone into her account. I get that, really, even if she's dead, it's an invasion of privacy, not just for her, but for everyone else. But I had just lost one of the most beloved people in my life, and I was grieving. It seemed okay at the time. It seemed justified, and besides, it's not like anyone had to know I set her status to offline so nobody would see that I logged in. I spent many sleepless nights looking through her Facebook, at the groups she was a part of, at the pages she liked, at the photos she posted. It quickly became an unhealthy addiction. Not that I cared, I was desperate for some kind of connection with her, anything at all. And so much of her life was catalogued online. It was the perfect poison. To my great shame, I eventually began to go through her inbox. If it makes it any better, I know it doesn't. There wasn't anything groundbreaking or terrible in her messages. Annalise preferred talking to people in person as opposed to over text. Most of it was pretty mundane. Sharing pictures of her little ankle-biter dog with our cousin, Sam. Ironing out details to a party invite with a group of college friends. Planning a last-minute trip to see her best friend, Frida. That last one hurt a little to read. They were set to meet up just a few days after Annalise's accident. Their messages were tense and curt, as though they'd gotten into a fight. Frida had seemed so distressed at the funeral, crying that Annalise would never forgive her. It must have been hard, her best friend dying without making up for whatever stupid argument they were having. I imagine that stays with a person forever. It's funny how we always think we have time. The day of the accident, I was actually at the pharmacy picking up iron pills for my sister at her request. Her anemia was back and her arms had been bruising up like crazy. She had been a little blue lately, so I was looking at the candy aisle, thinking maybe I'd bring her some Cadbury eggs to cheer her up. They were always her favorite, and I used to give her all the ones out of my Easter basket. When I got the call, my sister, my stupid, clumsy, lovely sister, it wouldn't be the first time she fell down the stairs. That had happened to her a lot as kids, but it was her last because this time she was unlucky. This time she broke her neck at the bottom. She died instantly. The memory of that awful moment, standing in the pharmacy, my mouth hanging open in a scream that seemed to have died somewhere deep inside my chest, flashed vividly in my brain, and my face crumpled as I sat there, reading Frida's message over and over. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. I was still crying, curled up in my computer chair in a fetal position, and Annalise received a new message. It wasn't rare for people to send new messages to Annalise's Facebook page. Most of it was clearly sent in a state of grief, people wishing she hadn't gone, wishing they'd had more time. I didn't read any of these messages. To be honest, That felt like too much of an invasion. Plus, they just reminded me of the fact that she wasn't coming home. And, weirdly enough, that was what I was trying to avoid by scouring her Facebook all the time. But something was different about this one. This one was from Ted. Before I could close out of the window, I read the first line. Why did things have to be that way? Visions of Ted flashed in my mind from the funeral. How pale he'd been, how shaky, like he was dying under his grief, like he had no one to share it with, although we all tried. Ignoring that little voice of my conscience, I kept reading. Why did things have to be that way? It didn't have to happen like that. You have nobody to blame but yourself, and am so angry with you. We could have worked things out. We could have made it work. I love you. Even in our worst moments, you knew that. How could you not? I did everything for you, gave everything for you. You were so ungrateful. You know I didn't mean it. I just got so angry. You do that to me. You know you make me angry. And it hurt me, too, to do that. You have no idea how fucking bad I felt about it the next day. And, besides, that fight nearly broke my hand. You aren't the only one that came out hurt. I wish you'd listened. I wish you hadn't tried to run. You thought I wouldn't find out about your plans with Frida. You thought you'd be safe with her. What a fucking joke. You knew you were safe with me. I just lose my temper sometimes. Who doesn't? You're supposed to love me, and that means loving everything about me. Or were those marriage vows a lie? It's your fault. It's your fault for leaving your phone open so I could read those messages. It's your fault for hurting me when you knew I was already in pain. It's your fault for making me so angry that I did something to hurt you again. Don't you understand? It's your fault. And now you've been punished for it. As I read the messages, I became increasingly ill. Slowly, a picture started to form in my mind, a picture that made my heart rate pick up and my jaw hang open. No. Before I had time to react further, another message came in. What the fuck, who's reading this? Shit, I'd forgotten that by clicking on the message, it sent a read message notification. In panic, I shut my computer, backing away from it like it was toxic. It took me a few hours to process what I'd seen, to try to understand it, but by the time I realized what Ted had done to my sister, I knew what I had to do. I took screenshots of the conversation and went down to the police station. It was about 3 a.m, and they were surprised to see me, of course, but they were very interested in what I brought in. They started the search for Ted immediately. Unsurprisingly, he wasn't in their home. He was gone, along with his wallet and all his personal identification. They stopped to talk to Frida, too, and she told them everything about how they'd been planning to get her away from him, to hide her until she could get a divorce finalized. Frida wanted to talk to me, but I refused. I have nothing to say to her for not coming forward earlier. The police think their prospects of catching him are pretty good. He'll almost certainly have to use a credit or debit card along the way, which will help them pinpoint his location. As for me, I'm hoping they don't find him, because if they find him, then he'll be at the mercy of the law, and I've decided that the law is pretty lenient, especially in these parts. If Ted gets convicted, and that's a big if, he might get life in prison, and life in prison is too good for scum like him. The police have started their search. Well, I've started one of my own, and am not stopping until I find him and get justice for Annalise, for my family. I won't stop until has choking on his own rotten blood. Story 5. Public Service Announcement. Beware of Facebook posts advertising LTU products. Having trouble losing that last 10 pounds? Maybe your skin isn't as clear as you'd like it to be. Have a goal you just can't seem to accomplish? Maybe you're tired of the same boring 9 to 5 every day of the week. Maybe your boss is getting on your nerves. Maybe you'd rather be your own boss. If any of these statements ring true for you, the LTU is just what you need. LTU provides the tools needed for you to become the best you possible. That sounds good enough, right? Well, how about if on top of that you could help others become the best they can be, all while making a heck of a lot of money? LTU will enable you to run a business on your time, fill your pockets, and make your life the best life. Contact me to join my very own LTU team and begin your journey to success today. That is verbatim the Facebook post that introduced me to LTU. It was posted by a woman, Samantha, in the group dedicated to the residents of our cul-de-sac. Samantha lives just 3 houses down from us and is the kind of neighbor that complains. If your grass is cut to her standards, the head of the neighborhood watch, you know the type. I read through the post quick and dismissed it as just another in a long list of multi-level marketing red pyramid scheme posts I've seen over the years. This one, like so many similar posts, caught the attention of the others in the group. There's 10 houses on our street, all cookie-cutter families, all the same people who shared it works. Posts, and that was the number 1 pyramid scheme crawling its way across social media. But Samantha is what you might call a person with some modicum of influence. Her sharing of the post encouraged other residents of our street to check it out. I just sort of rolled my eyes and went on about my day. About a week after I first saw the post, my wife Kimmy came home and informed me that she had run into Samantha at the grocery store, where the latter extended to us an invitation to her LTU launch party. Kimmy said that Samantha had essentially made it so she couldn't decline, and my wife, being the people-pleaser she is, confirmed our forthcoming attendance. A search online for LTU yielded no results whatsoever, which my wife and I found odd. We began wondering if this was yet another business Samantha was starting herself, much like the other 8 she had started in the 7 years we had lived there. Our curiosity furthered our SVP, and that Saturday we walked to Samantha's. The gathering was about as expected. People ate, drank, mingled with the same people they talked to every day, and waited for the host to make her presentation. In all, there were the 10 families in our neighborhood. The kids all stayed at another of our neighbors' houses with their daughter, who was back from college, and for other couples we didn't know. After a short time, Samantha came downstairs. Her presentation, without boring you, was without question the most vague experience I've ever had. It'll give you the highlights. LTU is essentially a vitamin supplement that claims to increase brain power and help regulate weight and a variety of other health things. The video presentation she used to show the business model included a literal, actual pyramid. That's pretty much all the important points, but let me include a couple quotes that were used. I work full-time, so you can work part-time. You don't get paid for the hour, you get paid for the value you bring to the hour. I lost count of these platitudes after the 8th or 9th. Apparently, Samantha's presentation worked because people immediately approached her to get involved. By my account, only my wife and I and one other couple that we didn't know before the party, but with whom we talked a bit and exchanged numbers, decided not to buy any that time. From that point on, our Facebooks were filled to the brim with Elateu, with all of the people who signed up at the party posting several times a day about how people can join them to start their new life today. It went this way for about 2 weeks. In that 2 weeks, Kimmy and I were asked at least once a day why we weren't a part of it, and this is when things started getting weird. I woke up around 3:30 a.m. and went downstairs to get something to drink. I turned at the landing and went down the last few steps, and absent-mindedly looked towards our front door, specifically the window next to it. I saw, standing at the end of the sidewalk that leads up to our porch, the silhouette of a woman. Am not gonna lie, it creeped the shit out of me, stopped me dead in my tracks. In the 7 years we lived there has been zero crime on our street, none at all. So I didn't immediately react as if whoever was out there was a threat. A few of the women on our street like late-night walks, but I was curious as to why any of them would stop to stare at our house. I opened the door and got a better look, finding that it was Joanne from down the street. I asked her what she was doing, and she didn't reply. I took a few steps closer to her and asked again, and this time it was like she was a robot who had just been turned on. She lifted her arm in a stiff wave and said in an overly cheerful voice, "Hi, neighbor. You have a beautiful home. Your family is lovely, but are you living your best life? If there is any aspect of your life that you feel could be improved, then Elateu is the answer." I was more annoyed and confused than anything else at that point. "What the fuck are you talking about, Joanne?" I asked her. "Elateu allows you to work from home and on your own schedule. You can be your own boss. Since I started Elateu, I've had more time for my hobbies, and my family today, and today only I can offer you our Elateu Silver package for 75% off, which will put you well on your way to getting the new car you wanted, or maybe a gift for that lovely wife of yours. This is something I'm only offering you, neighbor, and you know what? If you just turn around and sell it to someone else, you can keep the profit and get paid for bringing someone else on board. Are you ready to start living your best life?" I very brusquely told Joanne to go home and went back inside, perplexed and irritated. I went and got a glass of water, and when I went to head back upstairs, I looked out the window to find Joanne walking towards her house, only backwards, and with her arm still raised in that wave. She walked backwards the entire way down the street with her arm up, then disappeared into her house. I was more than a little creeped out after that, and I didn't get any more sleep that night. The following morning I told Kimmy what had happened about Joanne's wave, how it sounded like she was reading from a script. Her response was that Joanne has always been a weird woman, and suggested perhaps that she was in the early stages of dementia, something I didn't entirely agree with, but I accepted as an explanation in the absence of any other. Throughout the rest of that day, we had 2 couples and 2 individual people from our street stop by too. Tell us how great Elateu was, how much it was helping them in their daily lives. You probably can't tell, but I've lost 7 pounds. Christina from next door handed in my 2 weeks brother. Working from home now, you gotta get in on this. It sells itself. Bill, her husband. I am so glad Samantha had that party. This stuff has seriously changed my life. I've never been happier. Claire, Samantha's sycophantic best friend. It was just testimonial after testimonial that sounded like they were pulled straight from the non-existent website, and was always followed by them trying to convince us to join. We tried calling the other couple that didn't join right away that night at the party to see if they were being pressured like we were, but we got no answer. Things then escalated very quickly. That night, a loud bang on our front door woke us up. I went downstairs to check it out and looked through the window by the door and didn't see anyone. Cautiously, I opened the door and found two things: a box sealed with Eliteu shipping tape and a note pinned to the door with a knife. The note read, "We know how much Eliteu can help, and we love helping our friends. We've decided to offer you the Eliteu Bronze package free of charge. Still not sure? That's totally fine. All we ask is that you try one, just one, of our life enhancement multivitamins. And if after one day you still aren't convinced, then we'll concede that your life must just be perfect as is. You can just sell the bronze package to someone else and sleep soundly, knowing you helped someone else reach the same happiness you already have. But full disclosure, we know you'll be hooked. Your friendly neighborhood Eliteu team." This had obviously gone too far. I called the police and prepared to give a statement that would explain pretty much everything you've just read. Two officers arrived and took the report. All in all, they were in our home for about 30 minutes. As they were leaving, though, they walked right past the box that was still on our porch. I asked if they thought they should take it, if there might be anything on or within it that could help them figure out who stabbed our front door. One of them responded in a voice that was a clear pitch higher than he'd been speaking in the whole time he was inside. "No need. Let me tell you, though, sir, Eliteu is a wonderful company that has helped me live my best life. It's made me a better cop, a better husband, a better father. You should feel proud that someone you know wants you to reach that same level of happiness. And to get a bronze package free of charge, that sounds like a lucky day to me. Make no mistake, the life enhancement multivitamins in the bronze package may not be as good as the ones in the silver and gold packages, but they'll get the job done." His partner then chimed in. His voice sounded normal, but was entirely monotone, devoid of any kind of inflection or emotion, like someone was typing in the words and he was saying them as he went along. "Thank you for calling us, sir, and Mum, we will be looking into this matter. We assure you that we will investigate any leads that we may come across. If we have any questions, we will reach you at the numbers you have provided us. If you have any questions for us, you can reach us at the numbers provided on our business cards. We will keep you safe. Thank you." Just then, both officers put up their arms in the same stiff waves that Joanne had done, and both walked backwards to their car and reversed down the street. Naturally, our visit with them didn't make us feel any safer. Quite the opposite. Later that night, round 2 a.m., both my phone and Kimmy's began frantically going off. Text messages, Facebook posts, tweets, Instagram DMs, phone calls from everyone on our street, asking if we'd try the life enhancement multivitamins and if we were ready to start living our best lives. That irritated me to no end, and it was at that moment that everything, all the weird shit from the past few weeks, came to a head. I went into the garage and got a can of gasoline, after also grabbing a piece of paper and a lighter. I walked out to the porch, picked up the LTU box, and brought it to the middle of the cul-de-sac, doused it in gas, lit the piece of paper on fire, and dropped it on the box, which burst into flames. I then, in my state of heightened anxiety and irritation, began yelling about how everyone who wants us on their shitty pyramid scheme bullshit could fuck off. How if anyone else approached us about it there were gonna be problems, etc., etc. Not a single light in any house on the street turned on. The box stayed ablaze for a short time, but eventually died out, during which time I'd gone up to bed, though I had no intention of actually sleeping, and with good reason. About an hour after my dumbass had lit a box on fire in the middle of a residential street, we heard a number of voices, all in unison. You have chosen to not become involved with the life-changing business that is LTU, and that's okay. I jumped up from bed and looked out the window down at the street and saw everyone from our block, roughly 30 to 35 adults and children, standing there in a kind of half-circle towards the end of our driveway. We understand your hesitancy, but we cannot forgive it. We live elite lives and cannot be expected to share them with those who refuse to answer their call to greatness. You will now be exterminated. Your chance at an elite life will go to some other lucky person. As the last word simultaneously left their lips, they all began briskly walking towards and around our house. At this point, Kimmy was already awake, and I told her to grab her phone and come downstairs with me. We made our way down to the basement as Kimmy called the police. We told them a large group of people was attempting to enter our home, and that several units would be needed. We also said that they were holding signs, but we could see what they said, were chanting something we couldn't make out, and were waving around torches, none of which was true. The reason for the exaggeration of an already crazy situation was that we live in a small town. If ever there are more units needed than the local police can accommodate, they send in the sheriffs, who we hoped there was a chance might not be on the LTU train. As Kimmy had the phone on speaker, we started hearing glass shattering and pounding on the doors. The 911 operator contacted the sheriff's station while we were listening and sent them to our home. Kimmy went to the corner with a number of knives and a large can of pepper spray, while I got my cordless nail gun that I'd long since modified because I do dumb shit when I'm bored sometimes. Suddenly all the sounds upstairs stopped. "Hey guys," a voice said from above us, a voice that sounded like someone trying to imitate someone else, at doing a poor job. "It's Ben Bronner, remember me? We met at the party. My wife and I were the only people besides you guys to not opt into LTU right away. Let me tell you, that was a huge mistake. LTU is amazing. It's undeniable. I only wish I would have signed up right away. It would have been a much better choice for my family and I. Come on out and let's talk." The silence after his voice lingered for a moment, but was then quickly overtaken by what sounded like absolute pandemonium upstairs. It sounded like they were breaking everything in our home. I positioned myself at the bottom of the stairs with the nail gun and waited. After only a moment, the doorknob began to rattle and the door started being pounded on. Soon after that, the wood started splintering. Once a hole big enough allowed for it, an arm reached through and began feeling around for the deadbolt and doorknob locks. I took the opportunity and sprinted up the stairs and began slamming the nail gun into the arm, and eventually got the hand nail to the door itself. Screams boomed from the other side of the door as I jumped back down to the basement floor. Luckily, our basement door is pretty heavy-duty, so taking it off the hinges wasn't an immediate worry, and we also learned then that they could feel pain. What I didn't anticipate was when whoever was connected to that arm stopped screaming and I heard the locks click. Then the basement stairs began to creak. LTU regrets not being able to bring you on as an elite salesperson, various voices said in unison. The stairs continued creaking, and before long, several of them were piling into the basement. Men, women, and children. I started shooting nails at the adults, and a few in each were able to make them withdraw in pain, wailing about how LTU would save them. The kids started charging us, but ... and am not exactly proud of this. They were easily taken out by punches and pepper spray. We then began hearing gunshots. A few more of our neighbors came down the stairs, but were quickly subdued with nails and mace. Police, everybody drop what's in your hands and stay where you are. We heard from the floor above us. Several gunshots then rang out amidst the flurry of footsteps pounding on the floor above, bodies dropping. We heard more footsteps going up the stairs to the second floor, then a distant scream followed by more gunshots. We heard a few different voices yelling out clear, coming from different areas of the house. The basement steps then began creaking. A voice identified itself as police and told anyone down there to put their hands up, which we did. I immediately let them know that we were the owners of the house and the ones who called. Officers continued coming downstairs, zipping the hands of the people wed, dispatched and getting whatever weapons they had away from them. The police confirmed who we were, and shortly thereafter we were led upstairs, and through the tears pepper spray does not only affect those on which it's employed, if it's used in an enclosed area. We saw an absolute mess of carnage. Whoever the arm belonged to that reached through the hole in the basement door had been removed from it, and the appendage still stuck to the door, only now it was hanging, dripping blood, having been hacked off by someone not patient enough to figure out another solution. Our house was littered with bodies and absolutely destroyed. Walls were torn down. Every item not nailed down was thrown around and broken. Two ceiling fans were ripped out. Next to the basement door, slumped against the wall, was a dead man with the face of Ben Brunner, tied over his own. It absolutely goddamn horrific. Stepping over bodies, we went outside, where the corpses of the two officers who had come earlier that day were splayed across the walkway leading up to our destroyed home. Ambulances and fire trucks had all begun convening at the end of the cul-de-sac as we were taken to the police station. That was 3 days ago. We haven't yet been made aware of what exactly was in the LTU products, but we did learn that 19 of our neighbors, fathers, mothers, and children, had been killed. The rest were in police custody, be it in a hospital or jail. We also learned that the Brunners had been killed inside their home about a week prior to the attack on us. With join LTU now to start living your best life, smeared in blood on their bedroom wall. The faces of them and their children removed and used for the raid on our house. We have about as many answers now as we did before we were attacked, and I don't know how far Eliteu spread before this happened, or if it was just contained to our neighborhood. The people at the party. This has been long, but before I wrap it up, I just want to say I don't know how we could have avoided this. I feel like even if we wouldn't have gone to the party, everyone still would have been pressing us to join. They were hypnotized, brainwashed, something. Just, if you see Eliteu come across your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, unfriend them. Do whatever you can to stay as far away as possible.